No one celebrated my graduation, just a frozen pizza on the counter. So I canceled every bill in my name and finally found my own peace. My name is Zachary. I'm 22 years old, and just a few days ago, I graduated from college. Honestly, I wasn't expecting fireworks or anything dramatic. No banquet hall with decorations or a crowd shouting my name. But even though I've learned not to expect much from my family, deep down I still hoped they might do something small. A simple meal, maybe a slice of cake, or even a handwritten note would have meant something. I'd spent the past week watching my classmates post photos online, standing with proud parents, arms around each other, all smiles. Some wore matching clothes with their families. Most had banners, flowers, and long captions filled with love. As for me, I walked into a quiet house and saw a single frozen pizza sitting on the kitchen counter. That was it. The only acknowledgement of my graduation was a message in the family group chat that said, "Congrats, Zachary." That short sentence was wedged awkwardly between a joke from my uncle and a few pictures of my cousin's dog. No one else followed up. No phone call, no gathering. Just that. The pizza was still in its plastic wrapping. There weren't even any cooking instructions, as if they didn't expect anyone to actually eat it. It hadn't been warmed. It hadn't been touched. It looked like something left over from a meal no one cared to finish. For a while, I just stood there and stared at it. What made it worse was the faint smell still lingering in the room. Smoke from fireworks, charcoal, and grilled food. It brought back the sound of the party that had happened just a few days earlier. My younger brother George's graduation. He's 19. Barely passed his community college courses. But his celebration was massive. Outdoor lights lined the backyard. A full buffet was set up, and there was even a drone flying overhead filming the whole thing like it was a movie trailer. I watched from my bedroom window while I packed my things into boxes. Nobody asked me to come outside. Nobody even told me there was a party happening. When I asked about it later, they said, "It's his time. Let him have it." I remember watching my mom's stress over cupcake decorations, making sure they looked like tiny diplomas. My dad was manning the grill like it was the 4th of July. Everyone was laughing, hugging, taking photos. Meanwhile, I was in my room folding laundry and wrapping up my final assignments. I didn't complain. I kept to myself. That's what I always did. As a kid, I had to get used to being on my own. I was the quiet one. The one they told to stop. Being dramatic whenever I asked for help or simply wanted attention. George, on the other hand, always needed the spotlight, and they were happy to give it to him. He got awards, handmade signs, surprise gifts. I got silence. And that silence got heavier over the years. So when I walked into the kitchen that day and saw that same cheap pizza, the one we used to eat when nobody felt like cooking, it hit hard. It was the kind of food you grab in a hurry, not something you serve to celebrate someone's big moment. My mom walked in about an hour later, still on the phone, laughing like it was just any normal day. I asked, "So, nobody thought to do anything for my graduation?" She barely glanced at me, shrugged, dropped her purse on the couch, and said, "You've never been the party type, right?" Like that was some sort of compliment. Like I should be grateful they didn't bother. I didn't say anything back. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just turned, walked to my room, and zipped up the suitcase I hadn't finished unpacking since leaving my dorm. Everything important was already inside. My laptop, my diploma, and a small envelope of money I'd saved up from tutoring and weekend jobs. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I walked past her without a word. Past the cold pizza, past the empty house, past the group chat that had stopped caring after that single message. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I simply walked out. Sometimes the loudest choices are the ones made in silence. That night, I checked into a budget hotel about 30 minutes away. The room was small and plain, but it was quiet. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. No glares, no snide comments disguised as jokes. Just me, a bed, and peace. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Aunt Beverly. All it said was, "Why is everyone panicking? No greeting, no emoji, just that." I stared at the screen, trying to picture what they were saying back home. Maybe Mom was telling everyone I'd run off again, like she used to say whenever I took long walks just to get some space. I thought about replying. Maybe even making a joke about the pizza. But I didn't write back. I placed the phone down and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every unsaid word pressing down on me. I didn't cry, not exactly. But the tears were there, just beneath the surface, waiting for the smallest crack. By morning, there were more messages. One from my cousin. One from George. It was just a question mark followed by, "Dad said you're gone. Talk to Mom." But the only message that really stayed with me came from Mom. She wrote, "We didn't want to make you feel that way. Not sorry. Not we should have done better." Just a vague, polished sentence that shifted the blame onto how I felt. Not what they did. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a new document. I gave it a title, "All the Things They Don't Know I Paid For." Then I began to write a list. My college bills, groceries, they never reimbursed. George's broken laptop that I quietly replaced, Dad's credit card that I paid off, the power bill in January. When Mom forgot, all the ways I held things together, kept the lights on, kept them from falling behind, and never once asked for thanks. Never once was recognized. They didn't see the sacrifices. They only noticed when I finally stepped away. They never realized what I was doing because I never mentioned it. I assumed at some point they'd figure it out. I thought that's how family worked, that when you gave, you eventually received something back. But in our household, the numbers never added up, and I finally reached the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next thing I wrote down on my laptop wasn't about money. It was about what I planned to do moving forward, something they wouldn't expect. At first, the idea of cutting off financial support felt wrong. I worried it might come off as spiteful or petty. I questioned whether I was being harsh. But as I sat there in that quiet budget hotel room, I couldn't stop thinking about what my mom had said. "You're not really the celebrating type." That line had stuck with me. It turned something inside me. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't a scheme to get even. It was about walking away from people who had never truly made space for me to belong. Not emotionally, not practically, not ever. The following afternoon, I sat in the hotel lounge with headphones on, blocking out the noise around me. I pulled up my financial records and started reviewing everything, line by line. It was honestly surprising how much of my money had gone to cover their expenses. Streaming services like Netflix tied to George's email, Spotify through my mom's account, the family's shared phone plan. I had taken over the phone account when I started college because I understood the tech better. I had also paid for other utilities, water, electricity, and kept their cloud storage running so all their photos and files would stay safe. I never asked for credit. I didn't wait for someone to say thank you. I just kept handling things because no one else would. That night, I set a reminder on my phone. Cancel everything in 3 days. Not because I was angry, because it was time. In the next 2 days, I didn't reach out to anyone. But my phone buzzed constantly. My mom sent a series of messages, each one longer than the last. She tried to sound calm, but her texts felt anxious. At one point, she even used a nickname from when I was little, something I hadn't heard in years. That one hit me, not because it was sweet, but because I knew it wasn't real. Her affection always came with a condition. It was like she stored warmth in a box marked only open when necessary. George called once, left a voice message. It began awkwardly. "Hey man, Not really sure what this is about. Then came the line that confirmed everything. But Mom's losing it. Can you fix it? Fix it. That was always my role. I was the one who had to patch things up, keep things moving, cover the cracks. But not anymore. That evening, I sent one email, not to my family, to my former boss from the tutoring center I worked at during college. She had once mentioned that if I stayed after graduation, there might be a full-time opportunity. I asked if that position was still available. She replied in under an hour. "Still yours if you want it," she wrote. "We're opening a new branch, and it comes with your own office." I stared at the screen. My own office. Not glamorous, no spotlight, but honest. It felt more solid and real than anything my family had ever given me. The next day, I shut down the family phone plan. Almost immediately, I received a notice. "Your service has been disconnected." Then another. "Payment failed. Insufficient funds." That one came from the electric company. Within hours, 3 different customer service reps reached out asking if I was sure about closing the shared accounts. I clicked yes on every single one. Then I turned my phone off. Just for 24 hours. That evening, I rented a car and drove 2 hours north to visit the tutoring center's new location. It was a small town, peaceful. The roads were calm, and the only coffee shop nearby had a chalkboard menu and a barista who made eye contact when talking. I ordered a latte and sat near the window, watching the sun dip behind soft hills and tired trees. I wondered if they were still trying to call me, but to be honest, I didn't feel much about it anymore. When I got back to the hotel, my inbox was flooded. Since the phone plan had been disconnected, my family started messaging every other platform they could think of. My job email, my old Gmail, even my LinkedIn profile. One message was from my dad. It was short, cold, and carefully written. "You're being childish. Families go through problems. You don't just walk out." I read it twice. That word, problems. They only ever saw issues when I stopped being the one quietly solving them. Later that night, I opened the family group chat for the first time in several days, just to see what they were saying. George had written in all caps, "Dude, why is..." "My phone off, I need it," and followed it with, "Work." Then came a string of angry emojis. My mom had posted, "I don't know what's wrong with Zachary. He's clearly dealing with something," as if I was broken, as if I hadn't spent the past few years quietly keeping everything afloat. Then there was one from my aunt, the same one who messaged me the first night I left. She wrote, "So what did we even do?" That was it. No apology, no effort to understand. Just that one sentence, filled with confusion. I sat there, hands on the keyboard, wondering if it was even worth explaining. Would anything I say actually matter? Then I remembered something my first-year writing professor told me when I was struggling to cut a scene from a story. She said, "You don't need to explain everything. Sometimes silence is the punctuation that ends the sentence." So, I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new file on my laptop and titled it, "Final Exit Plan." Not because I was escaping, but because I was done staying. 3 days after I left, the silence finally broke. Not by me, by them. It started with an email from the person who owns the house we lived in, our landlord. Because despite the way my parents acted, the house we grew up in was never truly ours. My parents had been renting it for years from a distant relative. What they didn't know is that I had been covering a part of that rent, every single month, ever since I found an unpaid notice hidden in a junk drawer 2 years ago. The email now said, "Payment missed. Contract may be terminated. Please, respond immediately." That was the first domino. Then came the rest. George, full of pride, couldn't access his music anymore. His Spotify had been under my name. My dad's credit card, which had been slowly improving thanks to quiet payments I made, got declined. And my mom, she hit a wall too. She called her stylist only to be told her appointment was canceled due to a failed payment. That plan had also been under my account. And just like that, they finally saw the gaps I had been filling all along. Not through arguments or long explanations, just through absence. Sometimes it takes everything falling apart for people to notice what was holding it together. The messages they sent next shifted in tone, from puzzled to irritated, almost like flipping a switch. Zachary, what is going on? Why are you doing this? Call me immediately. You think this is funny? You're being cruel. But I wasn't laughing. I wasn't hiding out of spite or trying to make a statement. I was sitting quietly in a small, modest apartment I had just moved into. The couch beneath me was used, bought off a local online listing. I was sipping a cup of tea, reading their texts like they were distant echoes from a life I had quietly stepped away from. The tutoring center had been generous. They offered to cover some of my relocation expenses and gave me flexibility in choosing my work hours. For the first time in a long time, I had a workspace with a door that had my name on it. My ID badge read, Bennett, academic consultant. I had real colleagues who listened when I spoke. I wasn't invisible. I didn't have to raise my voice or repeat myself to be acknowledged. Yet despite this new start, I could still feel the weight of old expectations tugging at me. Years of playing the role of the responsible one, the dependable one, had tied an invisible knot around my neck. It wasn't just about leaving. That was the simple part. The real battle was the guilt they kept trying to feed me after I walked away. They didn't just want me to return, they wanted me to feel guilty forever leaving. That's what their next round of messages was about. My mother changed her tone completely, like someone tuning through radio stations, looking for the right signal. I know you're upset, but you're hurting all of us. I didn't mean what I said, I was just having a rough day. You always take things too personally. You're punishing us for not being perfect. And then the final punch. You'll regret this when we're gone. That was the emotional turning point. She couldn't bring herself to take responsibility. So instead, she leaned into fear and guilt, tools she had always used when apologies were too difficult. I didn't answer her. Instead, I replied to the only person who had asked a sincere question, Aunt Beverly. She had messaged earlier asking if everything was okay. While I could tell she wasn't prepared for the full truth, I decided to keep my response honest, but brief. I wrote, I earned my degree, walked into the house that night, found a frozen dinner with my name on it, and watched all of you celebrate George like a celebrity. No one acknowledged me. The only time I come up now is when something I quietly took care of stops working. I didn't disappear, I just stopped volunteering to be invisible. She never responded. A week passed. 7 full days of silence. Then, one Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I had been halfway through reading a novel I'd meant to start back in my second year of college. I placed the book down, opened the door, and there she was, my mother. She looked disheveled, her hair uncombed, her face bare of makeup, and she wore the same expression she always did when things got messy, when a teacher called home, when a bill bounced. This was her cleanup look. She didn't speak immediately. Just stood there, clearly unsure of how to begin. I didn't help her find the words. Eventually, she said, We just wanted to do something for you, in a way we thought you'd like. I tilted my head. I stayed silent. A microwave dinner? I asked, her eyes filled with tears. And for a brief moment, I let myself imagine. Maybe this time she'd understand. Maybe she'd own up to it. Maybe she'd really see me for once. But then she said it. You've always been too emotional. That was the moment it all became clear again. It wasn't an apology. It was an excuse dressed up as concern. I stepped back and began to close the door. She reached out, lightly touching the edge of the frame. "Please, just talk to your brother. He's a mess. His job depends on his phone working." I gave a dry laugh. "You mean the phone plan I was paying for?" Her mouth opened, but no words followed. She couldn't answer. She didn't even try. That was the moment I decided. No more. I was done. Being the silent bank account for a family that only remembered me when something they needed stopped working. I stepped fully outside, calm and certain. You can't ignore me, overlook me, and then panic when the support you never thanked me for disappears. I was never appreciated. Not once. I walked away because that frozen pizza wasn't nearly as cold as the way this family treated me. She blinked. Her skin lost color, and in that pause I realized this conversation wouldn't change anything. She still didn't get it, so I gave her one final statement. I didn't run away. I just stopped showing up where I was never welcome. Then, I shut the door. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Exactly 3 days later, everything came crashing down. After my mom left my apartment without getting the response she had hoped for, everything went quiet. There were no more texts, no emails, not even a cryptic post on Facebook. But silence in families like mine is never peaceful. It's just the space between the cracks, before everything collapses, and collapse it did. I got a call from the property manager near my tutoring job, the man who handled maintenance and rental logistics. He sounded amused. "Hey, Zachary, hope you're well. I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but someone was trying really hard to reach you. A woman. She seemed upset. Said it was urgent, but didn't give any details. Just thought you should know." I thanked him, even though I already knew it was my mother. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop and accessed the family Google Drive. Something I had almost forgotten was still tied to my email. One of the last things I hadn't disconnected. Inside a folder labeled Home Stuff were documents I knew too well. Past due notices, unpaid electric and water bills, late rent warnings. One file was a photo of a letter from a debt collection agency. My name wasn't on any of them, but I had seen enough of these before to know where it was all heading. I logged out. That night, George called me using a new number. I picked up. "Bro," he said after a pause, "you really shut everyone out, huh?" I didn't answer. He kept going. "They're falling apart. Mom's been crying nonstop. Dad's not talking. Aunt Beverly's trying to calm things down, but it's a mess. Can't you just come back, just talk to them?" There was a time when I might have listened. When hearing someone cry meant something. When I thought tears equaled remorse. But I had lived in that silence too long. And now, I finally understood. He was talking about the same mom who couldn't be bothered to heat up a meal the night I graduated. George said, "She didn't mean it like that." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get defensive. I simply replied, "No, George, she meant exactly what she said. Just like when she called me too emotional, she meant that too. And Dad? He wasn't joking when he told me I should just be grateful I wasn't homeless. They weren't confused. They weren't slipping up. It wasn't miscommunication. These weren't accidents. They were consistent patterns. Like when they spent over $1,000 celebrating you, while I came home to a frozen meal in a cardboard box. That wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Every time." George shook his head. "You're being too harsh," he said. "No," I answered, calm and steady. "I'm just being honest." He sighed, frustrated, as if my honesty was the problem, as if I was the one making things complicated. Then he snapped, "You act like you're the only one who had a hard time, like you're the only one who ever gave anything to this family." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "No, I'm not the only one. But I am the one who gave in silence, I covered the expenses no one wanted to acknowledge. I stepped in before being asked. I made sacrifices without recognition. And in return, I was treated like a backup plan. Someone to rely on when it was convenient, but not someone to value. I paused again, letting the weight of that reality settle in. You want to know why I never said anything all those years? I asked. It wasn't because I was afraid to hurt anyone. It was because I knew the moment I stopped helping, someone would call me selfish. And now that I've stopped, here it is, just like I expected. George didn't have a response. The call ended with silence on his end and peace on mine. The very next day, I received something unexpected. A handwritten letter came in the mail. The envelope was addressed in my mother's usual formal cursive. Inside were 2 pages. It was part apology, part defense. She started by writing how difficult it was raising 2 sons. She said they never intended to leave me out, that it wasn't on purpose. According to her, George had always been the emotional one, while I was the independent one. She used that word over and over, independent, as if that meant I didn't need support or affection or care. She explained that lately, things had started to unravel. She said the house didn't feel the same without me, that I had always been the one keeping everything held together without anyone noticing. Her final line read, "We need you. Please come back so we can fix this." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, not to keep it forever, just to have it. To remind myself that it was real. But here's the thing they still didn't understand. You can't fix something that was broken on purpose. Me walking away didn't destroy the family. It simply revealed what had been cracked underneath for years. It made it impossible to keep pretending. I kept going with my life. The new tutoring center began to grow, faster than even the directors expected. Within months, I was promoted. I became the team leader for a group of new tutors, most of them in their early 20s, unsure of themselves, but full of potential. They reminded me of myself. Quiet, capable, unseen. I gave them space to grow. I noticed their efforts. I celebrated their successes. One day, a soft-spoken tutor named Alexander pulled me aside and said, "You're the first adult who remembered my name without asking twice." That moment meant more to me than anything my family had ever said. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was honest recognition. From there, I started building a life that didn't center on shrinking myself to fit someone else's needs. I got to know my neighbors. I joined a local book club. I bought a used bicycle and started riding through nearby parks. I created a daily routine that felt natural, something that made sense to me and no one else. Eventually, I blocked every family number. Not to punish them, not out of hate, but because I needed peace, I needed quiet. I had spent too many years letting their problems take up space in my thoughts without asking for rent. Months went by. On the morning of my 23rd birthday, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was a delivery person. No return. Address. Just a plain brown box. Inside was a framed photograph. It was a picture of George and me when we were kids, sitting on the curb outside our old house. We were holding popsicles and laughing. Next to the photo was a short handwritten message. "I didn't understand what you were carrying. Now I do. I'm sorry." I sat down and looked at the picture for a long time. Not because I missed those days, but because it reminded me of how long I had waited to be seen, to be acknowledged. Maybe, finally, someone had started to understand. Or at least tried. I didn't write back. I didn't throw it away either. Some things don't need replies. They just need space, distance, time. That evening, I celebrated my birthday with 2 co-workers. One brought in a homemade cake, the other brought sparkling apple cider. After work, we sat around sharing stories, laughing about bad dates, swapping. Music playlists, talking about books we never finished reading. Nobody made jokes at my expense. Nobody talked over me. Nobody asked me to be less so they could be more. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was just passing through life. I wasn't a guest. I wasn't temporary. I wasn't a placeholder. I felt like I belonged. Not to the family I was born into, but to the life I built with intention, step by step, without apology. And I didn't need balloons or big moments or fireworks. All I needed was something simple, quiet, calm, and peace. Peace that didn't come with strings attached.